he's not okay. That's not what I'm going to do, because I didn't do this. So why would I look at you and say that? Because I love Gannon. I did not hurt Gannon. Not letting someone skate.
What could you possibly be scared of at this point?
On January 27th, 2020, Gannon Stauch, an 11-year-old boy, is reported missing in Colorado Springs. The initial reports painted a picture of a typical ordinary day gone horribly wrong. Gannon, a innocent, loving child, vanished seemingly without a trace, leaving behind a distraught family and a community on edge.
Search for 11-year-old Gannon Stauch intensified today, but there's still no sign.
Amidst the confusion and growing fear, one figure stood at the heart of the mystery: Gannon's stepmom, Letecia Stauch. Letecia was the last person known to have seen Gannon.
Oh, I can't make any promises.
You can't make promises, but which is better? To go to jail for the rest of your life?
I didn't do anything to Gannon, sir.
You can't insert someone else in here unless you're going to tell me who it is.
Hey, I didn't do anything to Gannon, sir.
The head injury, the neck injury, whatever that was that caused that pool of blood down by the bottom of its bed. You know that the sheets and all that stuff, the blood seeps down in.
She was his primary caregiver that day, a day that started like any other but ended with a terrifying question. Where was Gannon? Letecia's accounts of that day were puzzling, to say the least. Her stories were conflicting, shifting. One moment Gannon was heading to a friend's house, the next, he was off on a hike.
Well, there's nothing that would have happened at the house.
So we went hiking at Garden of the Gods. Did you see the picture from Garden of the Gods?
Each version of events seemed more tangled than the last, adding layers of uncertainty to an already bewildering situation. Yet, as the hours ticked by, one fact became painfully clear. Gannon was not coming home. His clothes remained untouched. His laughter echoed only in memory. His family, his friends, his school, all were left with a chilling silence where a lively boy once stood. As hours turned into days, Gannon's father, Albert, who was on deployment, would soon return to a nightmare he never saw coming. And the person he trusted to care for him was at the center of the unfolding tragedy.
Basically read him and try to figure the situations out. So I understand that you may have heard those or whatever you may have heard.
Albert Stauch, desperate and determined, launches a solo search for his son. Albert, a father in agony, was thousands of miles away on deployment when the news of his son's disappearance hit him like a sledgehammer. The moment he could, he was on the first flight back home to Colorado Springs, the quaint town that held his worst nightmare. Albert, a man with a military background, knew he had to keep his emotions in check and focus on finding his son. He initiated his own investigation parallel to the law enforcement's efforts.
Did you kill Gannon? I need you to answer me yes or no right now.
I killed Gannon. The answer is no. I can't believe you asked me this.
Meticulously retracing Letecia's supposed roots, the places Gannon was last seen, and the areas surrounding their home. A significant breakthrough in Albert's independent inquiry was the discovery that Letecia's car had not followed the route she claimed on the day of Gannon's disappearance. The GPS data from her vehicle told a different story. She had mentioned taking Gannon to a friend's house and later a shopping trip. But the evidence from the GPS tracked her going a different route, one that didn't involve any friends' houses or shopping trips. Albert's heart sank with each inconsistency in Letecia's narrative.
No, I changed my story.
You did. This is the fourth version of the same story.
Each lie that surfaced, each deviation from the truth. The woman he had entrusted with his child's safety was now the prime suspect in his disappearance. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, and a chilling revelation. As his investigation progressed, the inconsistencies in Letecia's story began to mount.
He had to go from being with his mom back to me, and then Albert wasn't there. And then it was...
The missing pieces in her narrative, the contradictions in her alibi, the discrepancies between her words and actions, all started to coalesce into a sinister pattern.
So what do you want me to say? You didn't hurt Gannon? Did you kill Gannon?
No.
Albert, along with the law enforcement, was slowly peeling back the layers of deception, uncovering a horrifying truth that was lurking beneath. As the puzzle pieces began to fit together, a grim picture of betrayal and tragedy was coming into focus, a picture that would forever change the lives of those involved. Meanwhile, a series of events led investigators to Florida. As the search for Gannon continued in Colorado, a startling revelation came to light. Letecia Stauch had a connection to Florida. Investigators found that she had been in the Sunshine State around the time of Gannon's disappearance. This discovery would prove to be a significant turning point in the case. The connection to Florida took a horrifying turn when Gannon's body was found under a bridge in Pensacola. It was a grim discovery that no one hoped for, a heartbreaking end to the search for the missing 11-year-old. The location of the body in the same state where Letecia had been added a chilling layer of suspicion to her already dubious story.
You said you know he's okay.
No, I said as a parent, I'm never going to sit here and look at you and say.
Back in Colorado, investigators were piecing together a disturbing scene in Gannon's bedroom. The room, once a sanctuary for an innocent boy, was now a silent witness to a gruesome crime. Blood spatter on the walls, and a missing Nintendo Switch pointed to a struggle. The evidence was painting a terrifying picture of Gannon's last moments, and Letecia was at the center of it all.
When I gave you the rawest information, you tried to get help, but you wouldn't help me.
But I think I can help you. You did not call the police.
Yes, I did. I called the police.
Petco, right when he was taken.
As the investigation continued, the pieces of the puzzle were coming together. The Florida connection, the gruesome discovery under the bridge, and the chilling evidence in Gannon's bedroom were all leading investigators down a path they wished they didn't have to tread. As the investigation deepened, surveillance footage emerged that would turn the case on its head. Footage captured on the fateful day of Gannon's disappearance revealed a chilling sight. Letecia Stauch and a figure resembling Gannon were seen leaving their home only for Letecia to return later alone. This raised a storm of questions, obviously. Where had Gannon gone? Why hadn't he returned with his stepmother? The investigators, already suspicious of Letecia, were led on a grim journey to Pensacola, Florida. Gannon had met a brutal end, far from his home and the ones he loved. The boy had sustained severe injuries indicative of unimaginable violence. This was no accident, but a cruel and calculated act.
Did not.
And you won't tell me who did.
Would not. If someone struck Gannon in the bed, thank God we were all drugged then. If that's what you're saying happened.
The evidence found at the crime scene was damning. It didn't just point to murder, but to the murderer. The investigators, armed with their findings, were preparing to make their case. The surveillance footage, the discovery of Gannon's body, and the brutal injuries he had sustained painted an evil picture. And the 21-day trial of Letecia Stauch had started. It began with the prosecution laying out the chilling timeline of events that led to Gannon's death. Each piece of evidence was meticulously presented, from the blood spatter found in Gannon's room to the disturbing surveillance footage.
Well, then can you tell me how that blood got on the wall?
Sir.
That's Gannon's blood on the wall.
Okay, well, I guess, sir, if you think you have all the answers, then...
You're making me guess.
I'm not.
You've got the answers.
I'm not making you guess, sir. I'm going to be respectful to you. Because you offered to help me, you didn't help me, so I'm just going to sit here.
They started with what transpired in the Stauch household. They argued that Letecia had taken advantage of her position as a stepmother to commit an unspeakable act of violence against an innocent child.
I don't know where Gannon is.
You do. You know where he last was, and it wasn't at the...
Okay.
If the sun comes up in the morning, it goes down at night, every day. We have worked hundreds of these things.
That's what you think. Okay.
The prosecution claimed that Letecia had not only murdered Gannon, but also tampered with his body and physical evidence, attempting to cover up her horrific crime. The defense, on the other hand, presented a different narrative. They argued that Letecia was not a cold-blooded murderer, but a woman who had suffered a psychotic episode at the time of the crime. Pretty pathetic. They pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, suggesting that Letecia was not in control of her actions when she allegedly killed Gannon. The defense's plea of insanity, however, did little to sway the jury. The evidence was too compelling, the crime too heinous. After 21 days of testimonies, evidence, and arguments, the trial reached its climax.
Good things will happen to you today versus getting shipped back to Colorado.
Letecia Stauch, the woman who had once promised to care for her stepson Gannon, was found guilty of his murder. Justice was served. But for Gannon's family, this was a bittersweet moment. A sense of closure, perhaps, but one that came at the heartbreaking cost of a life lost too soon. The family's pleas for the maximum sentence echoed through the hushed room. Gannon's mother, her voice weathered by grief, demanded nothing less than life without parole.
Because my son deserves to be here. He deserves to be here. please call the El Paso Sheriff's County and let them know.
His father, Albert, stood stoic and resolute, his request for the court to strip Letecia of their shared surname reverberating with the weight of his regret. The defense's argument of a psychotic episode was dismissed by the jury, who saw through the veil of deceit. The evidence was overwhelming, the crime too heinous to ignore. The court was unanimous in their verdict, casting aside any doubt of Letecia's guilt. As the judge delivered the sentence, the courtroom hung on his every word. Letecia Stauch was sentenced to life in prison without parole for 2 counts of first-degree murder. The additional charges of tampering with a deceased human body and tampering with physical evidence brought with them shorter prison sentences, but the message was clear.
I can, however, say without hesitation that the facts in this case are the most horrific I have ever seen. Your conduct in this case deserves the maximum punishment that I can impose under Colorado law. As such, with respect to the charge of first-degree murder after deliberation, with respect to the charge of tampering with a deceased human body, I'm also going to sentence you to 12 years, followed by a 3-year period of parole. With respect to tampering with physical evidence, I'm going to impose an 18-month sentence.
Letecia's crimes would not go unpunished. The judge's decision was final. Life in prison without parole for 2 counts of first-degree murder and additional sentences for tampering with evidence and a dead body. A tragic end to a story that began with a missing boy and ended with a life lost too soon.